So now let's get with Revivalist architecture. Occurred in 18th to 19th century, so as you can see, it overlaps with industrial architecture. Okay, so from our timeline, um, after Renaissance architecture, we have revivalist, or we have the industrial earlier, then revivalist as well. However, these are all parts of kind of the modern type of architecture with this eras. So revivalist um, basically means reviving the classical styles, which based from Greek and Roman motifs. So first one we have is Neoclassicism, which basically used this two architectural styles, and these are the medieval times, not the Romanesque ones. So since the design during those times has a lot of mass and um, blockish type of structure, so we will be expecting designs that are that we are familiar with those types. So Neoclassicism is also called as federal style, and it thrives in United States and parts of Europe, especially in the major cities. So it is always or mostly used in special buildings, and it has adapted the decorated um, orders, or the decorated Greek orders of columns, and also has the Renaissance style dome, and somehow in between Renaissance look with older style. So because Renaissance almost adapted um, the Greek and Roman designs as well, which is why you oftenly see or um, prominent design that you will see in its structures is the array of columns or posts or pilasters. Then in Neoclassical, it has three main types of typology. So we have the temple style buildings, the Palladian buildings, and the classical block buildings. So as we also, or one of some of the characteristics that you will also see in each of the past structures, or that is that columns were multiplied and stacked, so it gives an impression of height with those columns, and it has the basic parts of um, the previous temples, has porticos, rotundas, has colonnades, of course, and since it is surrounded, or some of the especially the temple style is surrounded with columns, so you will be expecting a lot of arcades. Then good thing about this style is that it gives clean, neat, or elegant appearance. It is very symmetrical and uncluttered. It has mass due to its volumetric, or it gives definition to the volumes of shapes. It has either flat roof or sometimes gable, sometimes horizontal and flat. So let's start with the temple style building. Basically, a temple is or temples are mostly used during the Greek and Roman times, and those temples has its own features, especially the peristyle or the continuous line of columns around the building. And even though it is, or the motif is being used by Renaissance architecture, so the Renaissance only adapted it as blind arcades, um, but not series of real columns. Then also this temple style is also adapted, um, or this the design elements are also came from the churches and used also in modern buildings. So a good example of this one is the La Madeleine or the Madeleine, which is built and inspired in much smaller masonry of names, which will be shown later. It is one of the best preserved Roman temples of all. So basically, it's going back to the old style. And since it is, or this is designed in its present form as Temple of Glory of Napoleon's army, so every structures were always built in order to glorify a certain crusade. So basically, going back to the old old temple designs, adapting fully how it is, how the spaces are, how the mm, how the design of each capitals were, what is sculpted in the tympanum, and other sorts of stuff. So with the inside, it is, or it has a Renaissance motif. Since this is a part of arts and crafts movement, so they make sure that their appreciation and their a way of expressing their art is seen in the interiors of the structures. And during Renaissance, going um, to 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, a lot of painters are, um, or in Europe, a lot of painters have their careers booming, and different styles were evolving, which influences the other near countries or near states. So here's the Mason carry, and the difference is only with the materials used and how and some sculptural or some sculptures and some designs. Next, we have the Baltimore Basilica. It is the first Roman Catholic cathedral in the United States. So it is among the first major buildings constructed in the nation, as US is an adapting constitution. So this is the times where government is starting in the United States, and it is a masterpiece of Benjamin Henry Latrobe. So in our buildings, or in our main building in Holy Angel, that, or the facade is inspired by a neoclassical style of structure. So aside from that, so this is serving as a religious building or a church. However, it gives or most of or what I mean is that the neoclassical theme is giving, or it is symbolizing authority to certain places, or its design itself gives authority and power to the certain place, and it gives, or it is serving as a landmark as well. So with the interior, they made it simpler, some baffled ceilings, then some paintings with each spaces, and some sculpture of flowers or sunflower. So this is a modern interior, which they made, or which gives a direct appeal to the viewers. Next one, we have the Palladian style building, which is derived from Andrea Palladio, or one of the greatest architects in Renaissance, or during Renaissance architecture. So his design is mostly based on, or it's mostly based on cathedrals and churches. However, they adapted on how, or his ideals, how he designs, or how he portrays each design. So it is also how me one of the leader of this style is Robert Adam from Great Britain. So he is a prominent, or the most famous Palladian architect, and this style of architecture is mostly used in residences or country houses, and also with civic buildings, the capitals, and the White House. So again, portraying authority, and portraying, or basically residences of government officials or important people that that is serving, or that rules a certain state or country. So another one we have is William Thornton, a British American physician, inventor, painter, and architect who designed the United States Capitol. So he served as the first architect of the Capitol, but then turned over to different architects. But his plan and design was the one who was what they call this, who was followed, since he since during those times commission and bidding is being practiced. So he worked with different people, and he is also the first superintendent of the United States Patent Office. He also won and submitted a design for the Library of Philadelphia's New Hall. So here's the U.S. Capitol. It has the dome of a Renaissance architecture from Italy or Milan area design. Then has the porticos and the series of columns. So the Capitol is the home of the United States Congress and the seat of legislative branch of United States federal government. So it is located on Capitol Hill at eastern end of Washington, D.C. So the look is very familiar, or like you've seen the Pisa Cathedral has that motif or design adapted with the Corinthian columns or Corinthian capital columns with a shaft that is grooved or baffled. So the actual color is like a pearl white. Then we have William Thornton, an Irish architect best known for designing the White House in Washington, D.C. So he is the winner of the design competition then. And Hoban was the one supervises the architects in who serve in Capitol and carrying out the design of Dr. William Thornton. So there's been turnover that happened in those designs or in these buildings. So the White House is basically the residence of the residence of the president, and it has two bays, and so this is the rear. Oh, no, this is the front balcony of the building, and this is the rear part of the structure. So if you can or if you must observe, most of the structures or buildings then has a basement floor, and they are elevated, so adapting the medieval style or the medieval castles that where you will be able to see the structure very easily, and you will have a better focal point from the structure itself. Lastly, the classical block. So classical block building features a vast rectangular or square plan with flat roof and exterior rich with exterior detail. It usually has multiple levels, has repetitive patterns or series of columns and arcs, and it is also known as the Beaux-Arts. And since it was principally developed by École des Beaux-Arts, so French school for Beaux-Arts. One of the main pioneers of this style is Benjamin Henry Latrobe. So he's a British neoclassical architect. He migrated to the United States, and he is one of the first formally trained professional architects in the new United States. So he traveled in different parts of Europe, especially in Italy, France, and Britain, and he is coined as the father of American architecture. So he is called the father of American architecture since he is the first one who is a formal professional architect in the United States. And most of his structures are public, most of his designs are public structures or converted to public buildings, such as this St. Genevieve Library, used as public university and library in Paris, and has the collection of Abbey of St. Genevieve. So since during those times religion is very much one of the main purpose of developing a structure, so initially used as a convent or for church purposes, and it has documents that contains about the abbots in this place, and now it contains 2 million documents, which are um, mixed with history and about the place. Then it is or was designed and constructed under the direction of Henry Labrousse. So he is like the contractor of this structure. So this structure, I mean, is designed by him. So this is basically a classical block style in Paris. So the relation of Latrobe is that he is the first one in United States, and his influences were from French architects. Then next one we have Romanticism. So it is the turning styles of past to draw playful forms that address emotions. So from the term romance or romanza, not the Roman romance. It is, or it allowed architects to tailor historical styles according to particulars of building types and locations. So mostly revolving around medieval style of architecture, not on the classical ones. So the medieval were the palaces, and has this massive motif with a different finish. So as you can see, it looks like a medieval castle. So it is a strawberry hill in Florence, Italy. Then we have the Gothic revival, which is reviving the Gothic architecture, and mostly used in the US in 20th century, and in Philippines as well. It is adapted. Also referred as Victorian Gothic, Neo-Gothic, and Jigsaw Gothic. So this movement was born manifesting the Romanticism, and since, or the aim of all this revival or the revivalist style is to give the medieval nostalgia for each of the periods or eras that we had tackled, or mostly in Gothic and Romanesque. So it is also called as the Neo-Romanesque, but termed as Neo-Gothic because of the pointy details and the flamboyant designs which are adapted during the Gothic style. So also called as Neo-Baroque, based on the based on each of the styles used. So mostly of the Baroque architecture is rusticated style or rusticated finishes. So if you can remember Augustus Pugin, he is one of the influences or influencers of arts and crafts movement. So he's an English architect, and principally remembered as pioneering the Gothic revival style. So one of a good example of Gothic revival is the House of Parliament, also known as the Palace of Westminster or Westminster Abbey. So it is serving as the meeting place of the two houses of Parliament of UK. So these are the House of Commons and the House of the Lords. So and these are the nobles and the scholars. So wealthy people in England. And the architect who designed this is Charles Barry, who won the commission design, and styled with Gothic revival. So as you can see, the fine details or the pointy details and ends, but then has a different look or motif. So since in England, they have the perpendicular Gothic style, so it still adapted that proportions of building design. So it has 3 towers, and they are the Victorian, Elizabethan, and Central Towers. So one of those towers is so we have 3, and one of those towers is what we know as the Big Ben, or the Elizabeth Towers. So it is 96 meters of height and serving as clock tower. And the Big Ben was designed by Augustus Pugin, but after his death, continued by Charles Barry, and continuously or finished by Charles Barry. So like in the Renaissance times, or mostly in Europe, parts of Europe, they do commission works, they do contractual works, and they do collaboration works, which is why a lot of architects are involved in a single project, or sometimes 2 or many. So we have the Beaux-Arts Eclecticism. So we have to dissect this first, or we will dissect it in a while. So it is the symmetrical plans and eclectic use of architectural features. Often gives massive, elaborate, and ostentatious effect, and it is also called as the copycat design, or no, it has no originality, for it is just copying the old styles and reviving it, or simply adapting it. So it really has no main identity, or the appeal when you see one, or when you see a certain design, is that you will just be mentioning it as either a Gothic or a Romanesque or a Renaissance design. So the term eclecticism implies freedom on part of architect or the client to choose among styles of the past, and they will be joined together. So harmony with the design, mixture of the design elements, the design style, the finishes, materials, or the patterns, the looks, and to somewhat give an appeal that it is new, or making it original. So eclecticism is basically, for example, you want to combine Neoclassical with Gothic, so that's how you use it. So one of a good example is the Palais Garnier, or Palace of um, Charles Garnier. It is an opera house, and it is told that it has the Napoleon's third style of structure. So borrowed some design elements based on that building. As you can see, it has different kind of dome and some ornaments that are mixed in with Baroque, with giving a grotesque, or rusticated style, but then has the classicism style, or these orders of columns. So it is serving as an opera house, and it has been blended together with this certain styles. So said to have Renaissance and Baroque style. So the Baroque look implied, or is seen from is seen from the finishes, but then have the pattern and spacing and proportions of a Renaissance architecture. However, it has some vulgar materials or colors that gives an accent with the full design. So in the insides, it has a lot of sculpted walls and ceilings, and it has a grand staircase. Then we have the École des Beaux-Arts, or School of Fine Arts. So it is a French movement and taught the way of organizing buildings into balanced hierarchy of spatial elements and planning principles. So these are mostly used in interior designs actually, and they're learning or they're studying about the interiors during this time. Then we have the Eclecticism. So these are trend in European art and design and influence some ethnic groups and civilization of late 19th century. And these are non-Western cultures adapted to US and parts of Europe, also known as like exotic revival. And this includes Egyptian, Chinese, Turkish, and Moorish revivals. So the motifs of it adapting to modern or contemporary style, and has some patterns that are not usually seen in parts of Western culture. So first example of this is the Plum Street Temple, which is officially the Isaac M. Wise Temple. So designed by James P. Wilson and reflects a synagogue of architectural style. So emerged in Germany in the 19th century, and some Moorish motifs. So it has a different proportion of pillars than like an Egyptian motif windows or openings. Then the patterns itself is Moorish, and yes, it is mixed Moorish, but then has a part of Egyptian, or since the Byzantine period is mostly adapting from old style, so there it is, or that's how it is mixed. So again, it mirrors the cultures from the outside: tall proportions and three-pointed arc entrances, and also it has a rose window, so partly has a Gothic motif. It gives Islamic look due to the minarets, and also the pattern of each walls that gives that appeal. Then the repeated rose windows and Torah arc introduces the more Moorish theme. So aside from that, the form itself gives the Moorish look design. Then the interiors gives different or provides a different patterns and different colors that adds to the motif, that gives its own identity. And lastly, we have the VCU Egyptian building, which is the Virginia College University. It is a campus of it's a medical campus, and it is in Richmond, Virginia, and completed in 1845. So in the middle of the development of the peak of the architectural period, and it is considered to be one of the finest surviving Egyptian revival style building in in the nation, in Virginia, in US. Then is also um, it is also noted to be Philadelphia's, or it is um, constructed, I mean, by Thomas Stewart, a Philadelphian architect. So what gave it the Egyptian look is the tapering wall, the massive um, massive motif of design and patterns. Then the battered walls, that's what we call. Then the stucco and cast iron materials that were used are added. So in order to make this, or in order for this structure to have large windows, so we all know that Egyptian architecture or Egyptian buildings or temples have less openings, and this is because of security purposes and the structural stability of the building itself. However, even though it has 5-story, or it is a 5-story building, it has minimal windows, and its porticos has the die style arrangement of columns. The shaft of each column represents the bundle of reeds, so will be seen later. It has pylons and cavetos in the cornices. So these designs. Then the lotus flower motif design, repeatedly used. So the interior colors have intentional symbolism, which are red, that represents divine love, blue, that represents intelligence, and golden yellow, that represents mercy of God. So since this is a medical campus, so they intend, or they purposely use those motifs. So hieroglyphs are also incorporated in the design of the antechamber decorations and some floor tiles with a large scarab beetle. So for Egyptians, scarab beetle represents resurrection. So here's the look of the building from the exterior. So they had the large columns, then the shaft of each, or the battered walls, gives a different appeal. So for your activity, I will be posting it in our announcement page, and be sure to read it carefully. Be sure to read this PDF or presentation very well. If you have questions, we have our group page, so you can post any information or questions or comments from there, and I will be giving you instructions on the next activities and submissions, and what you will be expecting for the next topics. So have a good day or good night, and take care.